A 19-year-old Ryan and his friend Sean, who was a big goofball, were in Ryan's basement as they often would during the summer. While they were hanging out, Sean said they should check out the creepy little cemetery across town. It was the most random idea ever, and Ryan even told him that. Still, they had no school the next day, and Ryan knew exactly which cemetery Sean was talking about. It was questionable if one should even call it a regular cemetery. It was just a small plot of land with maybe 100 tombstones at most. The tombstones were very archaic looking, and any time boys would pass by, there would be no signs of anyone having come to visit within the last decade. The site probably dates back centuries, and it had this super creepy vibe to it because it was closed off by a Gothic metal fence, and it was surrounded by woods on two sides, the road on one, and some old abandoned building on the other. Everything about it just gave off scary vibes. It took a little persuasion, but Sean managed to get Ryan to want to check it out too. Ironically, it was a very cloudy, whitish kind of day, conveniently adding to the mood. Sean pulled his Honda to the side of the road. Ryan told him to pull up more, so it wasn't obvious. This was a low-traffic road, so it would look kind of suspicious. He pulled up a few hundred feet down the road, and they got out and cut through the woods so that any potential passing traffic wouldn't see them entering the little cemetery. Hopping the fence in the woods was easy. It was maybe a 3 or 4 foot fence. Sean kind of took the lead on this since it was mainly his venture. He led them through the eerie little plot of land, and they looked at the archaic tombstones. They all seemed to be from the 19th century. The writing on some of them was illegible at that point. Ryan couldn't help but feel like he was being watched constantly, so he started looking around the surrounding woods. He told Sean how creepy this was. "I know," he replied. Still, with the feeling of being watched, Ryan looked at the abandoned building next to the cemetery at one of the windows. For a brief moment, he knew he saw someone standing at the window, even through the fog, smudge, and dirt on the glass, but they casually either ducked or walked away from the window. He told Sean they were being watched by someone in that building, and he turned to look at it as well. Then Sean went to look for the entrance to it. Ryan told him don't. He said they should just leave before they got into trouble. In the end, Ryan stayed still by the tombstone the person was looking at while Sean walked around the building, and then he found a way in. He called Ryan over, but he stayed put. Then Ryan heard some loud kind of crack, so he looked in that direction, and there was this older man, probably around 55, with gray hair, who had on a black raincoat. He was wearing jeans, and he had a mustache, but that's all Ryan really got of him. Then he opened his mouth and screamed. Not just yelled, he screamed, "Get out!" He screamed it so loud Ryan thought he saw birds fly away from being startled. And just like that, Ryan started to feel lightheaded, and suddenly everything went dark. The next thing he remembered was waking up to being dragged in the woods. Ryan freaked out, thinking he was being kidnapped. But when Ryan turned and got up, he saw it was just Sean. Sean was freaking out about something. He told Ryan to follow him and run back to the car, so he didn't ask questions. As they ran through the woods, Ryan heard something close behind him, and when he turned, he realized they were being followed by someone, so he ran even faster. They got to the car, and Sean basically put it in drive before the car even had a chance to fully start. When Sean was inside that abandoned building, he found a sigil of Baphomet painted on the wood floor, which is basically the sign of Satan. Around it were a bunch of freaky dolls with buttons for eyes. He didn't get to see anything else in the building because he heard the old man scream at Ryan outside. He came running to find Ryan passed out on the floor, and he saw the old man slowly walking over to him. He started to drag Ryan away from the old man and into the woods. He actually literally picked Ryan up and threw over the fence to get him out. Ryan quickly came back to consciousness, and that's when they ran. Ryan didn't know why he fainted, but it happening at a graveyard with some kind of satanic ritual building right next to it makes it that much stranger. Mike is a cemetery operations coordinator, or just cemetery manager. Part of his job is sitting down with guests and family members of the deceased to set up funerals, facilitate the sale of plots, etc. A 30-something-year-old man named Mateo, a very spiritual man, once sat down with him to purchase a plot for his sick father, who was in hospice care. Mateo was a Hispanic man with very thick accents, and Mike saw in his eyes that he was a very caring man. Mateo showed Mike pictures of his father, who also looked like a very sweet man, much too young to be taken away from his family. But unfortunately, the man's time came that same week, and Mateo arranged for his father's funeral service at the cemetery. It was a very stormy day on the day of the funeral, which is thought to be a sign of good luck. The funeral procession stopped briefly in front of the front office building. Mike stepped outside under the front awning of the building and saw Mateo in the car behind the hearse. They waved at each other. Due to the weather, Mike went back inside until the procession was ready to proceed to the burial site. He got in one of the cemetery pickup trucks and followed the procession to the final stop, where he would stand with his umbrella supervising, as part of his job is making sure funeral services go smoothly. After the funeral, Mike did some laps around the place in the truck just to survey the area, as he did at least a couple times a day. Mike had a lot of paperwork to take care of, and on top of this, he had to close the cemetery that night, so a little later he went back to his desk and took care of this. The cemetery closes at 5:30, so as soon as it started to get dark, Mike drove around the place one more time to ensure all visitors had left, then drove over to the front gate to shut it. It was a relatively warm early March. The days were still on the shorter side, so by closing time on a normal day, it would already be getting darker, but on this stormy day, it already felt like it was nighttime. Mike was driving back to his office when he thought he saw someone hurriedly walking down one of the lanes of tombstones before turning behind a hedge and disappearing out of sight. Mike beeped his horn so as to let them know the place was closed, but strangely enough, he didn't see them again. He grabbed his umbrella and ran out into the rain in that direction. Mike turned beyond the hedge the person turned at and looked down this long row of tombstones on one side and hedges on the other, but didn't see anyone. He looked around in the rain for a solid 20 minutes, but eventually gave up. He drove back up to the office and browsed through the CCTV footage. None of it picked up on any unusual movement, even though it was a bit harder to see much because of the storm, and it was also pitch black outside now. Mike tried to multitask, keeping an eye on the camera while finishing up some of his paperwork, when he heard the front door to the visitation room slam shut. Mike sprang up from his chair and yelled, "Hello?" His first thought was that it was the same person he saw before. Maybe they got locked in the cemetery and were looking for assistance in leaving. He stepped out into the lobby, but no one was there. Mike looked around and again said, "Hello?" Maybe the door slamming shut was them leaving. Mike started looking out all the windows and stopped when, at one of them, he saw someone on the other side looking back at him with a blank expression. He jumped back and screamed that they didn't flinch. Mike stepped closer and made a squinty-eyed, confused look when he realized he recognized this Hispanic, older-looking man. In his head, it reminded him exactly of the pictures of Mateo's father he showed him. With his heart in his throat, Mike ran out the front door of the building and to the side where he saw the man, but he was gone. He wasn't booking it into the fields. He wasn't hiding in a bush nearby. He was gone. Mike looked around him as he stood in the rain, getting soaked, then ran back inside, packed up his things, locked up, and got in his car. He opened and closed the gate, once more locking it behind him, and drove home. When his wife asked him at home why he was being so quiet, Mike told her that he just had a long day at work. To this day, Mike thinks he was just overworking himself, and his mind was playing tricks on him. But it is still genuinely disturbing to think about. Our hero's name is Jeremy. This was in the dead of October, chilly and windy. He lived in a somewhat big town. It was very poor and old, early 18th century type buildings. Jeremy and his friend were bored one night and decided to go have some fun at 3 a.m. It wasn't exactly smart to go out at 3 a.m. in a poor town, but they liked to have fun. They got bored of driving around blasting their music. They were both very big metalheads, and at that point they had their own band, so they decided it would be interesting and cool to walk around a cemetery in the town. Behind the old town square there was a massive cemetery. It was divided by two sides of a highway, both sides taking up about 20 acres of land. Friends decided to check out the older part of the cemetery. This part was completely separated from the rest of the newer cemetery with an old iron fence and gate. They got to walking around and checking out the cemetery, trying to read the old moss-covered graves, taking pictures, and being a little bit disrespectful. But these were graves from at least a century ago, so there was no one living that would be upset by it, and they were sure the people in the graves didn't mind too much. After about an hour of checking it out, both of them sat down next to a giant pecan tree in the middle of the old cemetery. That's when they heard this little girl laughing. It was really close to them. At first, Jeremy assumed maybe it was a toy left on a child's grave or something like that. He wasn't one to scare easily, so he just figured it was motion activated or something like that. They were not at all easy to scare, so both of them just laughed, pointing out that it was creepy, and just kept talking and enjoying the ambience. Then, as in all stories like this, Jeremy got the feeling of something or someone watching him. Once again, he just figured that he was letting the entire thing get into his head. Then his friend said he thinks he sees someone in the shadows of a small wooded area right next to the cemetery, to which they were really close. At this point, they were both a little creeped out and decided to get up and leave. And that noise, the exact same noise, played again, and friends heard leaves crunching underneath the feet of someone. That's when they booked it. Both ran down the hill leading to the old part of the cemetery, where Jeremy's car was parked. He has never run that fast in his life. It sounded like that laughing noise was following them at that point. They both sort of just went into full fight or flight mode at that point, going as fast as they could without thinking. The noises behind them stopped as they got to the car. Jeremy started his car and put it in drive, pulling out onto the highway without looking. Luckily, no one hit them. Friends got down the road to the only gas station that was open at that time of night to check in the back of the car. They had both been discussing how they were scared some shit had been done to it. Both got around to check and immediately found the back door was open. Jeremy knew for a fact that neither of them ever opened it. There was no reason for them to open it. He looked in the back seats to make sure nothing was there, got right back in the car, and peeled out. He was still confused for a long time about what happened that night. He wasn't sure if they both overreacted or what. All they both knew was that they still felt that weird feeling that something was behind them whenever friends told this story.